Chapter 6. Between Worlds. The cargo ship was a world unto itself. For 6 days, Joe and Tanya existed in a bubble of rusting metal and ocean spray, suspended between the life they'd fled and the life they hoped to build. They spent their days on deck when the crew allowed it, watching dolphins race alongside the ship, feeling the sun on their faces. They spent their nights in the cramped cabin, holding each other as the ship rocked, talking about everything and nothing. "What's the first thing you want to do?" Joe asked on the third night. "When we get to Argentina, when we finally stop running." Tanya thought about it. "I want to sleep for a week, a real bed, in a real room with no one looking for us. Just sleep and wake up and know we're safe." "After the week of sleeping?" "I don't know. Maybe I'll take a dance class, see if my body remembers anything from when I was 12. She smiled. "What about you?" "I want to find a piece of wood, something local, something beautiful. And I want to build you something, a table, maybe, or a chair. Something you can look at and know that I made it for you, that it's ours." "I'd like that." She traced patterns on his chest. "You really think we can do this? Build a normal life?" "I think we can try. That's all anyone does, right? Try and see what happens. Most people don't have intelligence agencies hunting them." "True, but most people don't have your training and my ability to fix literally anything." He kissed her forehead. "We'll figure it out." On the 4th day, the captain knocked on their cabin door. "Need to show you something." They followed him to the bridge, where a laptop was open to a news site. The headline made Tanya's breath catch. "Massive intelligence leak reveals black budget operations. Dozens of illegal programs exposed in unprecedented document dump." The article detailed everything. Assassinations carried out on American soil, surveillance programs that violated constitutional rights, weapons deals with terrorist organizations, all of it backed up by documents, photos, recordings. Tanya's insurance policy released to the world. "This is going to cause problems for you," the captain said. "Big problems. Every intelligence agency in the world will be looking for the source." "How did you?" Joe started. "I have internet. I read news." The captain shrugged. "I don't care what you did or didn't do, but you should know, this changes things. You're not just running from one agency now, you've made enemies everywhere." After he left, Tanya sat on their bunk, staring at nothing. "Hey," Joe said softly, "talk to me." "I knew it would be bad, but seeing it all laid out like that," she shook her head. "I just exposed operations in 30 countries, burned hundreds of assets, destroyed careers. There are people who will spend the rest of their lives in prison because of what I just did. People who broke the law, who ordered assassinations and violated rights, and I know they deserved it. But there will be fallout. Innocent people who get caught up in it. Families who lose their income, agents who were just following orders, who now have targets on their backs." She looked at him, and her eyes were full of pain. "I just made a lot of widows, Joe." Joe sat beside her, pulled her close. "You also potentially saved a lot of lives, stopped programs that were hurting people, exposed corruption that needed to be exposed. Does that make it right? I don't know. Maybe nothing about this is right or wrong. Maybe it just is." He tilted her face up to his. "But I know you didn't do this for revenge or money or glory. You did it to survive, to protect us, to maybe make the world a little bit better. That has to count for something." Tanya leaned into him. "What if I'm just trading one set of deaths for another? What if I'm still the same person, just with different targets?" "You're not." The old Tanya followed orders, did what she was told, never questioned. This Tanya made a choice, took responsibility. That's growth. That's change. Is it enough? It's a start. They reached Panama on the 6th day. The captain docked at a small port outside the city, away from official channels. "From here, you're on your own," he said. "I'd recommend getting out of Panama quickly. Too much American presence, too many eyes. Head south. Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, countries with less cooperation with U.S. intelligence." They thanked him and made their way into the city. Panama was hot and humid, crowded and chaotic. Joe felt overwhelmed by the noise, the traffic, the sheer number of people after 6 days at sea. But Tanya moved through it like a fish in water, confident and alert. She found them a cheap hotel, paid cash, and they spent the day planning their next move. "We need to get to Colombia," she said, spreading a map on the bed. "From there we can cross into Ecuador, then Peru, then Chile, then finally Argentina. Overland, no flights, nothing that requires showing our passports too many times. That's going to take weeks. Better than getting caught at an airport. She traced the route with her finger. We take buses, hire drivers, stay off the main roads. It'll be slow, but it's safer. Okay. Joe studied the map, this vast continent they were about to cross. How much money do we have left? Tanya did the mental math. Enough for maybe 2 months if we're careful. After that, you'll need to find work. Or I will. Doing what? You're a carpenter. You can work anywhere. Me? She shrugged. I'll figure something out. I'm good at adapting. That night, as Tanya showered, Joe turned on the TV. More news about the leak. Congressional hearings were being called. The president had ordered a full investigation. Intelligence chiefs were resigning, and buried in a crawl at the bottom of the screen. Sources report intelligence asset Tanya Rodriguez sought for questioning in connection with leaked documents. Her name, her real name, out there for the world to see. Joe turned off the TV before Tanya came out of the bathroom. Everything okay? She asked, toweling her hair. Yeah, just more news about the leak. It's everywhere. She nodded, unsurprised. We should leave Panama tomorrow. First bus south. They left at dawn on a chicken bus, a repurposed American school bus painted in wild colors, packed with locals, livestock, and impossible amounts of luggage. It was hot, cramped, and uncomfortable. It was also perfect camouflage. No one looked twice at the tired American couple, squeezed between a woman with 3 children and a man hauling bags of grain. They crossed into Colombia at a small border checkpoint, where the guards barely glanced at their passports. James and Sarah Sullivan, Canadian tourists seeing South America. Nothing remarkable. Nothing worth remembering. Colombia was beautiful and terrifying. The mountains were stunning, the people warm, the food incredible. But Joe saw the tension in Tanya's shoulders, the way her eyes never stopped moving, always watching for threats. You can't live like this forever, he said one night in a hostel in Bogotá. Always looking over your shoulder. I know, but I don't know how to stop. Maybe you don't have to stop. Maybe you just have to learn to relax a little, trust that we're okay. The moment I relax is the moment someone finds us, or the moment you finally get to live. Joe took her hands. I'm not saying drop your guard completely, but you can't spend every moment in fight or flight mode. You'll burn out. Tanya closed her eyes. I don't know how to be any other way. Then let me help you learn. Over the next weeks, as they made their way south through Colombia, Ecuador, and into Peru, Joe made it his mission to help Tanya find moments of peace. Small moments. Simple moments. He taught her to appreciate local craftsmanship, pointing out the woodwork in old churches, the weaving patterns in market textiles, the clever joinery in furniture they passed. She taught him basic Spanish, laughing at his terrible accent, correcting his grammar with patience and affection. They hiked to waterfalls, explored ruins, sat in cafes drinking coffee and watching life go by. And slowly, incrementally, Joe saw Tanya begin to relax. Not completely. She still checked exits, still varied their routes, still kept a knife within reach. But sometimes, when they sat watching a sunset or eating street food or lying in another cheap hotel, he'd see her smile without that edge of fear. See her exist in the moment without calculating threats. In Cusco, Peru, they stayed for a week. Joe found work helping a local carpenter repair furniture in a small shop. The pay was minimal, but it stretched their funds and gave Joe something to do with his hands. Tanya spent the time exploring the city, reading in cafes, writing in a journal Joe had bought her. What are you writing? He asked one evening. Everything. What happened, what I did, what I'm trying to become. She showed him a page. I'm trying to make sense of it all. The missions, the kills, the choices. Trying to figure out if there was a moment when I could have chosen differently. Was there? I don't know, maybe, probably. She closed the journal. But I can't change the past. I can only try to be better going forward. You're already better. You're biased. Does it make it less true? In Arequipa, they celebrated New Year's Eve watching fireworks over the city. It had been 3 weeks since they'd fled Crescent City. 3 weeks of running, hiding, building something fragile and precious between them. To new beginnings, Joe said, raising a bottle of local beer. To new beginnings, Tanya echoed, clinking her bottle against his. They kissed as fireworks exploded overhead, and for a moment, Joe let himself believe they'd actually made it, that they were safe, that they could build the life they'd been dreaming about. But the next morning, everything changed. Joe woke to find Tanya standing at the window, phone in her hand, face pale. "What's wrong?" he asked. She showed him the phone, a burner she'd bought 2 days ago just to check news. The headline, "Former intelligence officer found dead in Mexico. Suspected homicide. Marcus, Tanya's contact, the man who'd helped them escape. Dead. They got to him," Tanya said, her voice hollow. "They found out he helped us, and they killed him." Joe felt ice in his stomach. "Are you sure it was them?" "Article says it looks like a robbery, but his apartment was barely touched. His electronics were smashed. His files were gone." She set down the phone. "That's agency work. They tortured him for information, then made it look like a random killing." "What information?" "Where we went. What identities he gave us. Everything he knew about our plans." She turned to face him, and Joe saw the fear there. "They know we're heading south. They know our new names. They might even know we're trying to get to Argentina." "So what do we do?" "We change plans. Again, we can't go to Argentina now. It's too obvious. We need to disappear completely. Go somewhere they won't expect." "Where?" Tanya thought for a moment. "Brazil, the Amazon. We go deep into the jungle, find a small town where no one asks questions. We hide there until things cool down." "For how long?" "However long it takes." Joe saw the weight settling back on her shoulders, saw the walls going back up. All the progress they'd made over the past weeks, gone in an instant. "Hey," he said, pulling her close. "We're still okay. We're still together. That's what matters. Marcus is dead because he helped us. Marcus made his own choice, same as we did. Same as everyone does." Joe held her tighter. "You can't carry responsibility for every consequence of this. You'll break under that weight." "I already am breaking. Then let me hold you together." Tanya clung to him, and Joe felt her shake with silent sobs. For Marcus, for herself, for the impossibility of what they were trying to do. But even as she cried, she was planning. Joe could feel it in the tension of her body, see it in her eyes when she pulled back. "We leave today," she said. "Right now, we take nothing but what we can carry. We get to Bolivia, cross into Brazil, and disappear." "Okay. It's gonna be harder from here. No more nice hotels, no more staying in cities. We go primitive, we go invisible." "I understand, Joe." She cupped his face in her hands. "Last chance. You can still walk away from this. Go back to the States, tell them I kidnapped you, forced you to help me. They'd believe it. You could go home." "I am home," Joe said. "Right here with you. That's the only home I need." Tanya kissed him, desperate and grateful. "I don't deserve you." "Yeah, you do. You just don't believe it yet." They packed in 10 minutes and left Arequipa on a bus heading east, toward Lake Titicaca, toward Bolivia, toward the deepest parts of South America where they could vanish into the green. Behind them, in hotel rooms and agency offices and safe houses across the continent, the hunt intensified. Marcus's death had yielded information. The net was tightening. But Joe and Tanya had something their pursuers didn't: each other. And the desperate determination of two people who'd found something worth fighting for. They crossed into Bolivia at a remote checkpoint. The guard looked at their passports, looked at them, then waved them through. "Last easy crossing," Tanya said. "From here, it gets harder." "Then we get harder too," Joe said. They pushed deeper into South America, away from the coast, away from cities, away from everything familiar. The Amazon beckoned, vast and green and full of places to hide. And somewhere in that green vastness, they'd build their life. One day at a time, one choice at a time. Together. Chapter 7. Into the Green. The Amazon was nothing like Joe had imagined. He'd pictured something from movies: dense jungle, exotic animals, adventure. The reality was heat and humidity so thick it felt like breathing through a wet towel. Insects everywhere. Rivers the color of coffee. And green. Green so pervasive it became almost oppressive. They traveled by boat from Bolivia into Brazil, following tributaries deeper into the rainforest. The captain was a mestizo man named Paulo who asked no questions and charged double for his discretion. "Where you want to go?" he asked in broken English. "Somewhere small," Tanya said in fluent Portuguese that surprised Joe. "Somewhere people mind their own business." Paulo nodded. "I know a place. Small village, 3 days upriver. They don't like outsiders, but they hate authorities more. You pay, you work, They leave you alone. Perfect. The journey upriver was brutal. The boat was barely more than a canoe with an outboard motor. They slept under a tarp when it rained, which was often. Joe's skin stayed perpetually damp. Mosquitoes found every exposed inch of flesh. But Tanya seemed energized by it. This was her element: survival, adaptation, operating in hostile conditions. "You're actually enjoying this," Joe said on the second day as they navigated a narrow channel. "I'm good at this," she admitted. "Comfortable, even. Give me a jungle and a knife. I can survive for months." "What about give you a carpenter and a bad attitude about humidity?" She laughed. "That too." They reached the village on the third day. It wasn't even on most maps, just a collection of wooden houses on stilts along the riverbank, maybe 200 people total. The locals were a mix of indigenous tribes and Brazilian settlers, united by their desire to be left alone by the outside world. Paulo introduced them to the village elder, a woman named Dona Rosa who looked older than the forest itself. "They need a place to stay," Paulo said in Portuguese. "They're willing to work." Dona Rosa studied them with eyes that seemed to see everything. "Running from what?" "The past," Tanya said. "Aren't we all?" Dona Rosa spat into the dirt. "You caused trouble here. I feed you to the river. Understood?" "Understood." "There's an empty house on the far edge. Needs repair. You fix it. You can stay in it. You work the fields, help with the fishing, contribute to the community. You do that. We don't ask questions about your past." "Thank you," Joe said. Dona Rosa looked at him for a long moment. "You're the carpenter, yes? Paulo told me. We have need of carpenter. The church roof leaks. The school has broken desks. You fix these things?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Then maybe you stay. Maybe." The house they'd been given was barely standing. The roof was half gone, the walls were rotting, and the floor was more holes than boards. But it had good bones, and Joe could see what it could become. "Home sweet home," Tanya said, surveying the wreckage. "I can fix this," Joe said, his mind already working through the repairs. "Give me 2 weeks and it'll be solid. Give me a month and it'll be beautiful." "We might not have a month. Then I'll work fast." They spent the first week just making the house livable. Joe patched the roof with palm fronds and scavenged tin. Tanya cleared out years of accumulated debris and wildlife. They worked from dawn until dark, collapsing exhausted onto the single mattress they'd bought from another villager. But slowly, the house took shape. Joe's hands remembered their purpose, and he found wood in the jungle, good hardwood that he could shape and join. The locals watched him work with grudging respect. On the 10th day, Dona Rosa appeared at their door. "The church roof," she said. "You start tomorrow." Joe spent the next 3 weeks rebuilding the church roof. It was good work, honest work, and he lost himself in it. The locals began to warm to him, offering advice in Portuguese and broken English, sharing meals, teaching him which plants were safe and which would kill him. Tanya integrated differently. She helped with the fishing, learned to navigate the river, taught the village children basic first aid and self-defense. Joe watched her slowly transform from the hardened operative to something softer, more human. One evening, as they sat on their newly rebuilt porch watching the sunset over the river, Tanya said, "I think I could be happy here." Joe took her hand. "Yeah? It's simple. Quiet. No one cares who we were. They only care about what we contribute." She leaned against him. "I've never had that before. A place where I'm valued for what I give, not what I can destroy." "You give a lot, Tanya. You always have. You just weren't in a place that appreciated it." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the jungle sounds, birds, insects, the river flowing past. For the first time since they'd fled Crescent City, Joe felt something like peace. But peace never lasts. It was their 7th week in the village when the strangers arrived. 3 men, Americans, coming upriver in a motorized boat that was too nice, too new for this part of the world. They claimed to be researchers studying indigenous cultures. But Joe saw the way Tanya tensed when she spotted them, saw her hand drift to the knife she now carried everywhere. "We need to leave," she said that night. "Now." "You think they're agency?" "I know they are. The way they move, the way they scan the village, the equipment they're carrying, that's not research gear. That's surveillance." "How did they find us?" "I don't know. Maybe someone talked. Maybe they've been searching every village in the Amazon. Maybe we just got unlucky." She started packing their few belongings. It doesn't matter. We have maybe 12 hours before they confirm we're here. Joe felt his chest tighten. Where do we go? Deeper. There's a settlement 2 days upriver, even more remote. Or we could try to make it to Ecuador, cross back into Peru. Tanya. Joe stopped her packing. We can't keep doing this, running every time they get close. We'll spend the rest of our lives running. That's the deal I made when I walked away. No, that's the deal they want you to think you made. But it doesn't have to be this way. What are you suggesting? Joe took a deep breath. I'm suggesting we stop running. We make a stand. We figure out a way to end this once and for all. Tanya stared at him. Joe, these are trained killers. They have resources, backup, unlimited funds. What do we have? A knife and a carpenter who knows how to fix roofs? We have your training. We have my resourcefulness. We have intimate knowledge of this jungle and these people. He gripped her shoulders. And we have each other. That counts for something. It counts for getting us both killed. Maybe, or maybe we're smarter than they think. Maybe we can turn this around. Tanya was quiet for a long moment. Joe could see the war in her eyes, the trained operative who knew the smart move was to run, and the exhausted woman who was tired of looking over her shoulder. What's your plan? She asked finally. Joe smiled. I don't have one yet. But we've got 12 hours to come up with something. They spent the night planning. Tanya knew how agency operations worked. The protocols, the blind spots, the overconfidence that came from always having superior resources. Joe contributed practical knowledge, the terrain, the village layout, the locals who might help if asked the right way. By dawn, they had the outline of a plan. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it was better than running forever. Last chance to change your mind, Tanya said as the sun rose over the river. I'm not changing my mind. This could go very wrong. Then it goes wrong, but at least we'll go down fighting. Tanya kissed him, hard and desperate. I love you, Joe Martinez. I should have said it before. I've loved you since that first morning in Crescent City, when you fixed Bert's toilet and acted like it was the most natural thing in the world. Joe's heart swelled. I love you too. Since the moment you caught my coffee mug, since before I even knew your name. If we survive this, when we survive this, Tanya corrected with a small smile. I want to marry you, properly, not Sarah and James Sullivan, Tanya and Joe. Us. Real. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. If we make it through today, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you happy. Deal. They spent the morning preparing. Tanya talked to Dona Rosa, explained the situation in careful terms. The old woman listened, then called a village meeting. The villagers gathered in the church Joe had repaired. Dona Rosa explained that men were coming who meant harm to Tanya and Joe, that they worked for a corrupt government, that they would bring violence to the village if they weren't stopped. We don't owe these strangers anything, one man said, pointing at Joe and Tanya. Why should we risk ourselves? Joe stood. You're right. You don't owe us anything. We've only been here 2 months. But in that time, I've repaired your church, fixed your school, built new fishing boats. Tanya has taught your children, helped your sick, worked alongside you in the fields. He looked around at faces he'd come to know, to care about. We're not asking you to fight our battles. We're asking you to help us protect this village. Because if these men succeed, if they take us, they'll come back. They'll wonder what you know. They'll cause trouble. The best way to keep this village safe is to make sure they never leave. Silence. Then Dona Rosa spoke. The carpenter speaks wisdom. These men threaten our peace. We end the threat. One by one, the villagers nodded. They'd been left alone for generations by being too difficult to bother with. 3 American agents wouldn't change that. The plan was simple. The 3 agents would come ashore looking for Tanya and Joe. The village would seem normal, cooperative. The agents would be directed to the house on the far edge, the one Joe and Tanya had repaired. But they'd never make it there. The jungle had 1,000 ways to kill a man. Snake bites, poisoned thorns, sinkholes. And if none of those worked, there were villagers who'd been defending their territory from outsiders for longer than the agency had existed. The agents arrived at noon as predicted. They came ashore with fake smiles and real weapons poorly concealed under their shirts. The village elder greeted them warmly, answered their questions about 2 Americans, man and woman, possibly staying here. Yes, yes, Dona Rosa said in broken English. They stay in house, far edge of village, I show you. She led them down a path that wound through the village, past houses and gardens. Children played, women washed clothes, men repaired nets. Everything normal, everything calm. The agents relaxed slightly. This was just another backwater village. The targets were probably sleeping. This would be easy. They never saw the first trap, a carefully weakened board that gave way beneath the lead agent's foot. He fell into a pit that shouldn't have been there, onto stakes that definitely shouldn't have been there. The other two agents spun, weapons drawn, but they were in the middle of the village now, surrounded by locals who suddenly didn't look so peaceful. The second agent took a dart to the neck, poison from a tree frog, fast-acting paralytic. He dropped like a stone. The third agent managed to get off a shot before a machete took him in the shoulder. He screamed. More villagers appeared, closing in. It was over in 90 seconds. Joe watched from the church bell tower, where Tanya had insisted he hide. She was down there somewhere, coordinating with the villagers, making sure no one else got hurt. When it was done, when the three agents were dead or dying, Dona Rosa gave orders in rapid Portuguese. The bodies would disappear into the river. The boat would be dismantled, sold for parts in distant villages. Within an hour, there would be no evidence that 3 Americans had ever been here. Tanya climbed up to the bell tower, blood spattered on her shirt. "It's done," she said. Joe pulled her close. "You okay?" 3 more names to add to the list. But her voice wasn't hollow like it used to be. "But these 3 chose to come after us. These 3 would have killed us and probably burned the village to make sure there were no witnesses. I don't feel guilty about defending us. That's growth. Maybe?" She looked out at the village, at the people who'd risk themselves to protect 2 strangers. "We can't stay here. Not after this. They'll send more. Eventually someone will come who can't be stopped with pit traps and poison darts." "I know. But first," Tanya turned to him. "First, I want to keep my promise." "What promise?" She smiled. "The one about marrying you." They were married that evening in the church Joe had repaired by Dona Rosa, who had the authority to perform marriages under Brazilian law. The entire village attended, dressed in their best clothes, bringing gifts they couldn't afford but insisted on giving. Joe wore clean jeans and a shirt someone had lent him. Tanya wore a simple white dress that one of the village women had sewn in a day. They had no rings, so they used strips of woven palm fiber. "Do you, Tanya Rodriguez, take this man to be your husband?" Dona Rosa asked. "I do." "Do you, Joe Martinez, take this woman to be your wife?" "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by the state of Amazonas and the laws of Brazil, I pronounce you husband and wife. Kiss your bride before I change my mind." Joe kissed Tanya, as the village erupted in cheers. It wasn't the wedding either of them had imagined as children. There was no white dress with a train, no tuxedo, no fancy venue or hundreds of guests, but it was real. It was theirs, and it was perfect. They danced that night to music played on homemade instruments, ate food prepared by the entire village, drank aguardiente that burned going down and made the world soft around the edges. As the celebration wound down and couples drifted home, Joe and Tanya walked to their house, their home, and stood on the porch looking at the river. "Mrs. Martinez," Joe said. "Mrs. Martinez," Tanya repeated, testing the sound of it. "I like that." "Me too." "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For choosing me. For believing I could be more than what I was." She leaned against him. "For fixing broken things, including me." "You're not broken. You never were. You were just waiting for the right person to help you see what you could be." They went inside and made love as husband and wife, gentle and tender and full of promise. When they finally slept, wrapped in each other's arms, Joe dreamed of a future that might actually be possible. But reality intruded at dawn. Dona Rosa was at their door, her face grave. "More boats coming, many more. I sent scouts upriver. They report at least 20 men, maybe more. Military-grade equipment. They'll be here by tomorrow night." Tanya and Joe looked at each other. "We leave now," Tanya said. "We've put this village in enough danger." "Where will you go?" Dona Rosa asked. "I don't know, but far from here, far from anyone else we might hurt." Dona Rosa nodded. "Then take this." She handed Tanya a satellite phone. "It's old, but it works. You need help, you call. The number is programmed in. Friends of mine, they help people disappear. Thank you. Thank you for fixing our church, for teaching our children, for showing us that strangers can still have honor. She clasped both their hands. May the river carry you safely. Within an hour, they were on the water again, heading deeper into the Amazon, away from the village that had briefly been home. Joe looked back once and saw smoke rising from the church. The villagers were burning it, destroying the evidence of their presence, making sure the agency would find nothing. I'm sorry, Tanya said. Sorry you had to leave behind your work. I'll build other churches, fix other roofs. He took her hand. As long as I'm with you, I can build anywhere. They traveled for 3 days, moving from tributary to tributary, avoiding settlements, living off the land. Tanya used the satellite phone once, connecting with Dona Rosa's contacts, a network of people who helped political refugees and cartel victims disappear. The contact directed them to Ecuador, to a city called Quito, where new documents would be waiting. From there, they could go anywhere. Start fresh with identities the agency couldn't trace. How much does this cost? Joe asked. Everything we have left, Tanya said. But it's worth it. These people are good. Better than Marcus, even. If they say we'll be invisible, we'll be invisible. They reached Ecuador 2 weeks later, exhausted and nearly broke but alive. The documents were waiting as promised. New passports, new names, new histories. This time Joe was David Chen, a teacher. Tanya was Lisa Chen, a nurse. Married for 5 years, relocating to South America for work. Third time's the charm? Joe asked, looking at his new passport. Let's hope so. They flew from Quito to Buenos Aires, using the last of their money for tickets. It was a risk. Airports meant surveillance, but the documents held. No one looked twice at David and Lisa Chen. Argentina sprawled before them, vast and full of possibility. They took a bus to Mendoza, at the foot of the Andes, where wine country stretched for miles, and tourists were common enough that 2 more wouldn't be noticed. They found a small apartment above a carpentry shop. The owner was looking for help. Joe showed him a few techniques, demonstrated his skill, and was hired on the spot. Tanya found work at a local clinic, her first aid training enough to qualify her as an assistant. It didn't pay much, but combined with Joe's wages, they could afford rent and food. It wasn't the life they'd imagined, but it was a life. It was real. It was theirs. And for the first time since Crescent City, they stopped looking over their shoulders quite so much. They were home. Chapter 8. The Illusion of Normal. 6 months passed in Mendoza like a dream. Joe was afraid to wake from. He worked in the carpentry shop 6 days a week, crafting furniture for local wineries and wealthy tourists. His hands remembered their purpose, shaping Argentine walnut and algarrobo wood into tables and chairs and cabinets that would last generations. The shop owner, an old man named Señor Vargas, taught him local techniques, and Joe taught him a few tricks from Texas. Tanya, Lisa, he had to remember to call her Lisa in public, worked at the clinic, helping doctors treat everything from tourists with altitude sickness to farm workers with injuries. She was good at it, caring in a way that surprised her. At night, she'd come home and tell Joe about the patients she'd helped, and he'd see the lightness in her eyes that hadn't been there in the Amazon. They lived simply. Their apartment was small but clean, with a view of the mountains that made Joe's heart catch every morning. They shopped at the local market, learned to cook Argentine food, practiced their Spanish until it was almost fluent. On Sundays, they'd take the bus into the wine country and walk through vineyards, talking about nothing and everything. Sometimes they'd splurge on a bottle of Malbec and drink it watching the sunset paint the Andes gold and purple. It felt like a real life, like they'd actually escaped. Joe wanted to believe it, tried to believe it, but he saw the way Tanya still checked exits, the way she tensed when someone walked too close, the way she kept a knife under her pillow and another strapped to her ankle. "How long do you think we have?" he asked one Sunday evening as they sat on their small balcony. Tanya didn't pretend not to understand. "I don't know. Could be months, could be years, could be they've given up and we're worrying for nothing." "But you don't think they've given up?" "No. I cost them too much, made them look weak. They can't let that stand. So we're just waiting." "We're living," Tanya corrected. "Every day we wake up safe is a victory. Every morning I get to make you coffee and kiss you goodbye and know you'll come home. That's more than I ever thought I'd have." Joe reached over and took her hand. "I want more for us than just survival." "Like what?" "I want to stop using fake names. I want to call my sister and let her know I'm okay. I want to talk about the future like we'll actually have one." Tanya squeezed his hand. "I want that too, but wanting and having are different things." "Maybe they don't have to be." That night, Joe lay awake while Tanya slept beside him, thinking about the life they had and the life they wanted. Somewhere between the two was a chasm they couldn't cross. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But he was a carpenter. He built bridges, fixed broken things. Surely there was a way to close that gap. He just had to figure out what it was. The trouble started on a Tuesday in April. Tanya came home from the clinic, earlier than usual, her face pale. "We need to talk," she said. Joe set down the piece he'd been sanding. "What's wrong?" "There was a man at the clinic today, American, said he'd hurt his ankle hiking. But Joe..." She sat on their worn couch. "He knew who I was. He called me Tanya." Ice flooded Joe's veins. "Are you sure?" He looked right at me and said, "You're good at hiding, Tanya Rodriguez, but not good enough." Then he left. "Did he threaten you?" "He didn't have to. The message was clear. They found us. Again." Joe sank down beside her. "How?" "I don't know. Maybe someone from the village talked. Maybe our documents weren't as clean as we thought. Maybe we just got unlucky." She rubbed her face. "It doesn't matter how. What matters is what we do next. We run, again," or Tanya looked at him, "or we don't." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm tired of running. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of using fake names and pretending to be someone I'm not." She took his hands. "What if we make them an offer? What if I agree to come in, give them what they want, in exchange for them leaving you alone?" "Absolutely not." "Joe, no, I didn't marry you just to let you sacrifice yourself. We're in this together. That was the deal." "The deal was stupid. I should never have let you." "But you did, and I'm not sorry. And I'm not letting you walk into their hands." Joe stood, paced. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. They won't stop. They'll keep hunting us until we're dead or captured. At least this way, you get to live." "What kind of life is that, without you?" Tanya's eyes filled with tears. "A safe one. A normal one. You could go back to Texas, see your sister." "Stop." Joe knelt in front of her. "I don't want safe. I don't want normal. I want you. I want us. And I'm not giving that up." "Then what do you suggest?" Joe thought about it. About the man at the clinic. About the message. About the fact that he'd walked away instead of grabbing Tanya right there. "They're playing with us," he said slowly. "If they wanted to take you, they could have. Grabbed you at the clinic, at the apartment, anywhere. But they didn't. They let you see him, let you know they're here. Psychological warfare, make us paranoid, make us run, see where we go, who we contact. Or make us desperate enough to do something stupid, like turn yourself in." Tanya nodded slowly. "So we don't run, we don't panic. We keep living our normal lives and see what they do next." "Exactly. Call their bluff." "That's a dangerous game, Joe. All of this is dangerous. At least this way we're not running blind." They spent that night planning. If the agency was watching, they'd give them nothing useful. No suspicious phone calls. No midnight escapes. Just David and Lisa Chen, living their quiet lives in Mendoza. But they prepared. Joe built a false bottom in their bedroom dresser, stashing emergency cash and fake passports. Tanya mapped escape routes, identified safe houses, re-established contact with Dona Rosa's network. And they waited. Days passed. A week, 2 weeks. Joe went to work, Tanya went to the clinic, they shopped for groceries, cooked dinner, made love, pretended everything was fine, but the tension was killing them. Then, on a Friday evening, there was a knock at their door. Joe and Tanya looked at each other. Tanya's hand drifted to the knife in her boot. Joe moved toward the door. "Who is it?" he called in Spanish. "A friend," a woman's voice answered. "Please, I need to speak with you. Both of you." Joe looked through the peephole. A woman, maybe 50, well-dressed, alone. No visible weapons, but that didn't mean much. He opened the door with the chain still on. "Can I help you?" "My name is Diana Cortez. I'm a journalist with the Washington Post. I've been investigating the intelligence leaks from last year, the ones Tanya Rodriguez released. I believe you're her, and I think I can help." Tanya appeared beside Joe. "How did you find us?" "The same way the agency did. Following the money, tracking patterns, talking to the right people. Diana looked behind her nervously. Please, I'm being watched. We don't have much time. Let me in and I'll explain everything. Joe and Tanya exchanged glances. It could be a trap, could be the agency using a new approach, but it could also be exactly what she claimed. 1 minute, Tanya said. You say one thing that doesn't add up, you leave. Understood? Understood? They let her in. Diana sat on their couch, pulled out a tablet, and showed them article after article, investigative pieces about the leaked documents, about illegal operations, about the hunt for the source. I've been investigating this for 8 months, Diana said. At first I thought that the leaks were from someone inside, someone still working for the agency. But the more I dug, the more I realized the source had disappeared. Gone dark completely. She looked at Tanya. That's when I started looking for you. Why? Tanya asked. Because your story deserves to be told. Because the public deserves to know who exposed this corruption and what price they paid for it. Diana leaned forward. And because I think I've found a way to end this for you. There is no ending, Tanya said flatly. They'll hunt me until I'm dead. Not if you become too public to kill. Not if I publish your story, the whole story, and make you a household name. They can't disappear someone the world is watching. Joe felt hope flare in his chest. You really think that would work? It's worked before. Whistleblowers who go public, who control the narrative, who become symbols. They're harder to silence. Not impossible, but harder. And combined with what you already released, with the evidence you have. Diana looked at Tanya. You could end this, really end it, but only if you're willing to tell your story. Tanya was quiet for a long time. Joe saw the war in her eyes, the part of her that wanted to stay hidden versus the part that was so tired of running. What would that look like? She asked finally. A series of articles, interviews, documentation of everything, your recruitment, your missions, the operations you exposed, your escape. I'd need access to your evidence files, corroboration of facts, willingness to go on the record. Diana paused. And you'd need to use your real name. No more hiding. You'd be out in the world exposed, but also protected by that exposure. And if it doesn't work, if they kill me anyway, then the world will know who did it and why. That's not great comfort, I know, but it's something. Joe took Tanya's hand. It's your call. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Tanya looked at him, at the life they'd built in this small apartment, at the possibility of something more. I'm tired of hiding, she said. Tired of pretending to be someone else. If there's even a chance this could work. She turned to Diana. Okay, let's do it. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Diana moved into a hotel in Mendoza and spent every day interviewing Tanya. Joe sat in on some sessions, watching his wife relive missions, deaths, choices that still haunted her. Watching her cry, watching her rage, watching her slowly come to terms with everything she'd done and everything that had been done to her. Diana was good at her job, compassionate but unflinching, drawing out details Tanya had never shared with anyone, painting a picture of a system that chewed up idealistic young people and turned them into weapons. Joe provided context where he could, talked about meeting Tanya, falling in love, choosing to run with her. His part of the story was smaller but important, the human element, the reminder that behind every whistleblower was a person trying to live a life. The articles started publishing in July. The Washington Post ran them as a 5-part series titled The Operative, One Woman's Journey from Assassin to Whistleblower. The response was explosive. Within days, Tanya's face was on news programs around the world. Politicians demanded investigations. Intelligence officials issued denials. The internet erupted with opinions, some calling her a hero, others a traitor, most somewhere in between. And the agency, surprisingly, went silent. It's working, Diana said during one of their check-ins. They can't touch you now. Not without confirming everything you've said. You're protected by public scrutiny. For how long? Tanya asked. As long as people care, as long as your story matters. Diana smiled. And I think your story is going to matter for a very long time. Congressional hearings were called. Tanya was subpoenaed to testify. Diana arranged for lawyers, security, media strategy. It was overwhelming and terrifying and strangely liberating. I'm really doing this, Tanya said the night before her testimony. I'm really going back. They were in a hotel in Washington, D.C., protected by hired security and public attention. Tomorrow she'd testify before Congress about operations that were supposed to stay secret forever. "You don't have to," Joe said. "We can still disappear, start over somewhere else." "No, I'm tired of running. This ends tomorrow, one way or another." Joe held her close. "I'm going to be right there, front row, watching you burn it all down." She smiled against his chest. "Mrs. Martinez, Destroying Government Agencies." Sounds like a good title for the movie adaptation. They made love that night like it might be the last time, desperate and tender and full of promises they hoped they could keep. The next morning, Tanya walked into the congressional chamber in a simple blue suit, her head held high, and told the world everything. She named operations, named targets, named the people who'd ordered kills and the people who'd carried them out. She detailed the lies, the overreach, the casual disregard for law and life, and she did it all using her real name. Tanya Rodriguez, former intelligence operative, current fugitive, permanent truth-teller. The testimony lasted 6 hours. When it was over, when the cameras finally stopped rolling, Tanya walked out of the chamber and found Joe waiting exactly where he'd been all day. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," she said. "For the first time in my life, I feel free." The fallout took months to unfold. Investigations were launched, officials resigned, programs were shut down or restructured. The agency itself faced an existential crisis, and Tanya and Joe became, bizarrely, celebrities. They were offered book deals, movie rights, speaking engagements. Universities wanted Tanya to teach courses on ethics and intelligence. Nonprofits wanted her to consult on whistleblower protection. It was overwhelming. It was also an opportunity. They moved back to the United States, not to Texas, too many memories there, but to California. Not Crescent City, though they visited once, staying at the Lighthouse Inn where Bert welcomed them like long-lost family. They settled in a small town outside San Francisco, where Joe opened a carpentry shop and Tanya started teaching part-time at UC Berkeley. They used their real names, paid their taxes, lived openly, and slowly, over the course of a year, they built the life they'd always wanted. It wasn't perfect. Tanya still had nightmares, still struggled with guilt, still looked over her shoulder more than Joe would have liked. But she also danced, took classes twice a week, reclaiming the dream she'd given up at 12. She wasn't going to be a professional, but that didn't matter. She danced because it made her happy. Joe built furniture in his shop and taught woodworking to local kids. He called Maria every week, had her out to visit, met his nephew who was now old enough to appreciate a handmade toy truck. They were happy. Not every day, not perfectly, but genuinely, honestly happy. It was their 2-year anniversary when Tanya came home with news. Joe was in his workshop, putting the finishing touches on a rocking chair, walnut and maple, fitted joints, smooth curves that would cradle someone for decades. "That's beautiful," Tanya said from the doorway. "Thanks, it's for Maria, new baby on the way." "I know," she told me. Tanya walked in, and Joe saw she was holding something, an envelope. "I got something in the mail today. From Virginia." Joe's stomach dropped. "The agency?" "No. Well, technically yes, but not what you think." She opened the envelope and pulled out a letter. "It's from the new director, the one who took over after the investigations." "What does it say?" Tanya read aloud. "Dear Miss Rodriguez, I am writing to inform you that after thorough review of your case and in light of your cooperation with congressional oversight, the agency has decided to formally close any and all investigations into your activities. You are no longer considered a person of interest, a fugitive, or a threat to national security. Any warrants or legal actions against you have been dismissed. While we cannot officially condone the methods you used to expose the programs in question, we acknowledge that your actions led to necessary reforms and improved oversight. You are free to live your life without fear of prosecution or pursuit from this agency." Signed, Director Sarah Chen. Tanya looked up, tears streaming down her face. "It's over. It's really over." Joe pulled her into his arms. "It's over." They held each other in the workshop, surrounded by sawdust and sunlight, and cried. For relief. For joy. For all the people they'd been and all the people they'd become. "We're free," Tanya said. "Actually free. We can go anywhere. Do anything." "Where do you want to go?" She pulled back and smiled. "Nowhere. I want to stay right here, with you, in our home, building our life. That sounds perfect. There's one more thing, Tanya said. I've been thinking about what we talked about the future, about what we wanted. Yeah? I want to have a baby. Joe's breath caught. Really? Really? I want to create something instead of destroy. I want to raise a child who knows they're loved, who gets to be a kid, who grows up in a world that's a little bit better because we fought to make it that way. She took his hands. I want to have a family with you, Joe Martinez. Joe kissed her, deep and long and full of yes. I want that too, more than anything. They made love in the workshop, on a pile of drop cloths, surrounded by half-finished projects and the smell of wood. It was imperfect and messy and absolutely perfect. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Joe said, "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think my truck breaking down in Crescent City might have been the best thing that ever happened to me." Tanya laughed. "Might have been? Okay, definitely was. Mine too." She kissed him. "Best Christmas present I ever got." They stayed in the workshop until the sun set, planning their future, talking about the child they'd have, the life they'd build, the peace they'd earned. Outside, the world kept turning, but inside Joe's workshop, two people who'd been broken and hunted and lost had found their way home, together. Chapter 9, What We Build. 3 years later, Joe wiped sawdust from his hands and stepped back to admire his work. The crib was finished, cherry wood with hand-carved details along the rails. Animals marching in a gentle parade, elephants, giraffes, bears, each one taken him hours to carve, but it was worth it. "It's beautiful," Tanya said from the doorway of the workshop. She was 7 months pregnant now, one hand resting on her belly, her dark hair pulled back in the same ponytail she'd worn that first morning in Crescent City. "You think so?" "I know so." She walked over and ran her hand along the smooth wood. "Our daughter is going to love this." A daughter. They'd found out 2 months ago. Elena Rosa Martinez, named for Tanya's mother and the old woman who'd married them in the Amazon. Joe pulled Tanya close, kissed the top of her head. "Hard to believe this is real sometimes." "I know what you mean." She looked around the workshop, larger now than his old one in Nacogdoches, with better tools and more space. 3 years ago we were running for our lives, now we're building a crib for our daughter. Life's funny that way. Funny's one word for it. She smiled up at him. "I prefer miraculous." The shop door chimed. They'd converted the front of the building into a small showroom where Joe sold his custom pieces. Tanya went to check while Joe started cleaning up. He heard voices, Tanya's and a man's. The man sounded familiar, but Joe couldn't place it. Then Tanya called out, "Joe, you should come see this." He walked into the showroom and stopped dead. Standing there, looking older and grayer but unmistakably himself, was Tanya's former handler. The man who'd threatened Joe, who'd sent her to Prague, who'd hunted them across 2 continents. Joe's hand instinctively moved toward the chisel in his belt. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. "Relax," the man said, hands up in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "Then why are you here?" Tanya's voice was cold, controlled. Joe recognized the tone, her operative voice, the one she rarely used anymore. "To apologize." The handler looked genuinely uncomfortable. "And to thank you." "Thank me?" Tanya's laugh was bitter. "For what? Destroying your career? For exposing a system that had become corrupt, for having the courage to do what I should have done years ago." He pulled out a chair, one of Joe's pieces, and sat without being invited. "I was forced into early retirement after your testimony. Lost my pension, my reputation, everything I'd worked for my entire life." "Good," Tanya said. "No, you don't understand. It was good. It needed to happen." He looked up at her. "I spent 30 years following orders, never questioning, never thinking about the cost. I convinced myself I was serving my country, protecting people. But I was just following orders." "I don't need your confession," Tanya said. "I need you to leave." "I will. But first I need you to know something. The operations you exposed, they were worse than you knew. Worse than even I knew. Your leak triggered investigations that uncovered things that made what you saw look like nothing." He stood. "You saved lives, Rodriguez. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Programs we were running that would have led to wars, to civilian deaths on a massive scale. You stopped them." Tanya's hand moved protectively to her belly. "That doesn't absolve me of the people I killed." "No, nothing does. I know that better than anyone." The handler moved toward the door, then paused. But it means those deaths weren't for nothing. It means you found a way to make it count. He looked at Joe. And it means you were right to choose her. She's one of the good ones, even when she couldn't see it herself. He left before either of them could respond. They stood in silence for a long moment. Are you okay? Joe asked finally. I don't know. Tanya sat down heavily. Part of me wants to believe him, that it mattered, that I did the right thing. You did. Did I? Or am I just trying to justify? Tanya? Joe knelt in front of her, took her hands. You're not that person anymore. You haven't been for a long time. You're a teacher, a wife, about to be a mother. You're someone who creates instead of destroys, someone who builds instead of tears down. But the past is the past. It shaped you. It made you who you are, but it doesn't define who you get to be from here on out. He placed his hand on her belly. This little girl is going to know a mother who fought to be better, who chose love over duty, who sacrificed everything to do the right thing. Tanya's eyes filled with tears. I'm so scared I'm going to mess this up. We both are, every parent is, but we'll figure it out, together, like we figure out everything. She kissed him, soft and grateful. How did I get so lucky? Broken truck, foggy motel, coffee station. Joe smiled, and a little bit of fate. Elena Rosa Martinez was born on a clear morning in October, weighing 7 pounds and 3 ounces, with her mother's dark hair and her father's eyes. Joe held her in the hospital room, this tiny, perfect person they'd created, and felt his entire world shift. She was so small, so fragile, so completely and utterly theirs. Hey, little one, he whispered. I'm your dad. I'm going to teach you how to build things, how to fix things, how to see the beauty in a piece of driftwood, how to be kind and brave and true. Tanya watched from the bed, exhausted and radiant. She's perfect. Just like her mom, biased. Absolutely. Maria flew out from California the next day, bringing Marcus and their 2 kids. She held Elena with the practiced ease of an experienced mother and cried happy tears. She's beautiful, Maria said, and I'm so glad you're here, that you're safe, that you found your way home. Me too, Joe said. Couldn't have done it without you believing in me. You did the hard part. You chose love over fear. That takes real courage. Over the next weeks, they settled into the chaos of new parenthood. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, the terror of being responsible for another human being. But also, Elena's first smile, her tiny hand wrapped around Joe's finger, the way she settled instantly when Tanya sang to her in Spanish. Joe built a changing table, a toy chest, shelves for books Elena would grow into. Each piece crafted with love, meant to last, meant to be part of Elena's story. Tanya danced less but read more, devouring parenting books and infant development guides. She also started writing, a memoir about her life, her choices, her journey from operative to mother. I want Elena to know the truth, she explained one night as Joe rocked their daughter. All of it, the good and the bad. So she understands that people can change, that you're not defined by your worst moments. She's lucky to have you as a mom. I'm lucky to have her, to have both of you. Tanya joined them, completing the circle. This is what I was searching for my whole life. I just didn't know it. Elena's first birthday fell on a Sunday. They threw a party in their backyard. Small and simple, just family and a few close friends. Bert flew in from Crescent City. Diana came from D.C. Even Paulo, their guide from the Amazon, somehow tracked them down and showed up with gifts. Elena toddled around in a purple dress, more interested in the wrapping paper than the presents, laughing as Joe's nephew chased her with bubbles. Joe stood on the porch of their house, the one they'd bought last year, with a yard for Elena and a separate workshop for him, and watched his daughter, his wife, his family. Tanya appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his. Happy? Beyond happy, content, grateful, at peace. He pulled her close, all of the above. Me too. She rested her head on his shoulder. You know what I was thinking about today? What? That motel in Crescent City? How miserable I was before I met you. How empty my life felt. How certain I was that I'd die alone, having never really lived. And now? Now I have everything. A husband who sees me, a daughter who needs me, a life that means something. She looked up at him. You saved me, Joe Martinez. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other. Maybe. But you did it first. You saw something in me worth saving before I did. Elena chose that moment to run up to them, arms outstretched. Joe scooped her up, and she giggled, patting his face with frosting-covered hands. "Da," she said, one of her first words. "That's right, baby girl. Da." Tanya took out her phone and snapped a picture. Joe covered in frosting, Elena laughing, both of them backlit by the afternoon sun. "That's going on the wall," she said. "Frosting and all?" "Especially the frosting. It's real. It's us. It's perfect." That night, after Elena was asleep and the guests had gone home and the house was quiet, Joe and Tanya sat on their porch swing, watching stars emerge. "Do you ever think about how we got here?" Joe asked. "All the choices that had to happen exactly right? My truck breaking down in that exact spot, you being there for that exact job, both of us being ready to take the risk. I used to think it was random. Luck. Good timing." Tanya laced her fingers through his. "Now I think maybe we were supposed to find each other. Maybe there's a reason my truck broke down." "Your truck? Your truck, whatever." She laughed. "The point is, I don't think this was an accident. I think we were meant to save each other. You believe in fate now? I believe in us. And if that's fate, then yeah, I'm a believer." They rocked gently, comfortable in the silence, comfortable in each other. From inside the house they heard Elena stir and then settle, their daughter, their miracle. The proof that people could change, could build something beautiful from broken pieces. "Thank you," Tanya said softly. "For what?" "For fixing broken things. For seeing potential where others see damage. For loving me when I couldn't love myself." "Always," Joe said. "For the rest of our lives. Always." 5 years later, Elena started kindergarten in the fall, proud of her new backpack and excited to make friends. Joe walked her to the bus stop every morning, holding her hand, making sure she had her lunch and her smile. Tanya was pregnant again, a boy this time, due in January. They'd name him Marcus, after the man who'd helped them escape and paid the ultimate price for it. Joe's carpentry business had grown. He employed 3 people now and took commissions from across California. His furniture was in museums, galleries, private collections. But his favorite pieces were still the ones he made for his family. Tanya had published her memoir. It became a bestseller, was taught in universities, sparked conversations about whistleblowing and intelligence reform. She donated all the profits to organizations that helped intelligence operatives leave the field and transition to civilian life. They were successful, respected, happy. But more than that, they were home. One evening, after Elena was in bed and they were waiting for the new baby to arrive, Tanya said, "I want to go back." Joe looked up from the chair he was refinishing. "Back where?" "Crescent City. I want to take Elena, show her where we met, thank Bert properly, walk on the beach where you first kissed me." "Okay, when?" "Next month, before the baby comes. I'll book the Lighthouse Inn." They made the trip in November, driving up the coast with Elena singing songs in the back seat. Crescent City looked exactly the same, foggy and beautiful and full of memory. Bert cried when he saw them. "Look at you, a family, and another one on the way." They stayed in room 7. Elena loved the ocean, the tide pools, the endless beach. Joe took her to the spot where he'd picked up that piece of driftwood all those years ago. "See how the wood curves?" he said, showing her. "That's because it grew twisted. But the twisting made it special, made it beautiful." "Like Mama?" Elena asked. Joe smiled. "Exactly like Mama." That evening, while Elena played in the motel's small playground, Joe and Tanya walked to the viewpoint where they'd first decided to run together. "Hard to believe it all started here," Joe said. "Not here, at the coffee station, with you catching my mug. Actually, I think it started when my truck broke down." "Actually," Tanya corrected, pulling him close, "I think it started the moment I decided to have coffee instead of running. The moment I chose to be human instead of a ghost." "Best decision you ever made?" "Second best." She kissed him. "Best decision was saying yes when you asked me to run with you. I seem to remember you asking me to run with you. Details." She rested her head on his chest. "Thank you for this life, Joe, for Elena, for Marcus on the way, for every morning I wake up and get to be Tanya Martinez instead of Asset 7734. Thank you for choosing me, for trusting me, for building this life with me." They stood there as the sun set over the Pacific, exactly where they'd stood 5 years ago when their future had been uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. Now it was just full of possibility. Elena ran up to them, out of breath and laughing. "Look what I found." She held up a piece of driftwood, twisted and beautiful. "That's perfect, baby girl," Joe said. "We'll take it home. I'll help you make something with it." "What can we make?" "Anything you want. That's the beautiful thing about wood. It can become whatever you need it to be." Tanya watched father and daughter examine the driftwood, planning their project, and felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. She'd spent so many years destroying things, breaking things, ending things. Now she built, she created, she loved. And every day she woke up grateful for the broken truck, the foggy motel, the carpenter who'd seen her humanity when she'd forgotten she had any. They drove back to their hotel as night fell, Elena chattering about all the things she wanted to build, Tanya's hand resting on her belly where their son grew, Joe humming old country songs his father had taught him. This was home. Not a place. Not a building. This, the three of them, soon to be four, moving through the world together. This was what they'd fought for, what they'd run for, what they'd risked everything for. And it was worth it. Every second. Every sacrifice, every terrifying moment, it was worth it. Epilogue. 10 years later, Elena was 15 now, taking woodworking classes with her father, dancing ballet like her mother once had. Marcus was 9, already showing signs of his mother's analytical mind and his father's patient hands. Joe and Tanya sat on their porch, gray starting to thread through their hair, laugh lines deepening around their eyes. Joe's workshop was legendary now. Tanya taught at Stanford and consulted for intelligence reform organizations around the world. They'd built a life. A real life. A beautiful life. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened?" Elena asked one evening at dinner. "If Dad's truck hadn't broken down? If you'd never met?" Tanya and Joe looked at each other and smiled. "I'd probably still be in Nacogdoches," Joe said, "making cabinets, eating alone, wondering if there was more to life. And I'd probably be dead," Tanya said simply. "Or worse, still alive but empty, still following orders, still being a ghost." "So Dad's truck breaking down saved your life?" "In every way that matters, yes." Marcus, always literal, said, "But that means we wouldn't exist. Elena and me, we're only here because of a broken timing belt." Joe laughed. "I guess you could look at it that way." "Or," Tanya said, pulling her children close, "you could look at it as proof that sometimes broken things lead to the most beautiful outcomes. That sometimes the worst moment of your life is actually the beginning of your best life." "That's deep, Mom," Elena said. "Your mother's a philosopher," Joe said. "Your father's biased," Tanya countered, completely and proudly. That night, after the kids were in bed, Joe and Tanya made love slowly and tenderly, the way they had for 15 years now. Then they lay tangled together, comfortable in the silence, comfortable in each other. "No regrets?" Joe asked. "Not one," Tanya said. "You?" "Not one." "Even though your sister still gives you grief about disappearing for 3 months?" "Especially that. Best 3 months of my life." Tanya laughed and kissed him. "I love you, Joe Martinez. My carpenter, my hero, my home. I love you, Tanya Martinez, my spy, my dancer, my everything." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other and in the life they'd built from broken pieces and desperate choices and a love that had shaken the ages. And somewhere in Crescent City, in a small motel overlooking the Pacific, Bert locked up for the night and looked at room 7, where 2 people had met one foggy Christmas and changed each other's lives forever. He smiled, sent up a small prayer of thanks for broken trucks and second chances, and went to bed. The ocean kept rolling. The fog kept coming. Life kept moving forward. And in California, in a house built with love and filled with laughter, a carpenter and a former spy slept peacefully. Their children safe in nearby rooms, their future bright and certain and entirely theirs. They'd found what they were looking for. They'd found home. The end. To be continued in The Carpenter and the Spy, Book 2, The Next Generation, where Elena and Marcus discover their mother's past isn't quite as settled as everyone thought, and the family must band together to face a new threat, one that wants to use Tanya's knowledge to restart the very programs she destroyed.